And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers go on the road and pick up a victory over the Nebraska Cornhuskers 82-74 in a game that Indiana actually led by 19 at one point in the second half. The Hoosiers held on, never let Nebraska get it closer than 6 from there on out, and it moves Indiana to 14-4 on the season, 4-3 in conference play. And let me underscore it again. It was a road victory, and it has been so hard in Big Ten play to get road wins. I think that now brings the overall record of Big Ten home teams to 40-7. So, yeah, you know, there were some warts in the play and yada, yada, all that stuff. But Indiana went on the road, got an 8-point win in one of the toughest places to play, in a place where Nebraska has beaten a couple of good teams. So, bottom line, a really important night for Indiana, a really big win. And we're excited to break it down for you here on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. I'm your host, Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms. Alex Bozich from Inside the Hall is going to be our special guest tonight, so he'll be popping here in and out. He's also going to be obviously doing his postgame work over at InsideTheHall.com, which you should absolutely check out. But he'll be here in a little bit. But let's start this show the way that we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. And for the banner moment, I'm going to the 2:45 mark of the second half. It's 73-65. And it kind of felt like Nebraska had a little bit of momentum and was ready to make one last gasp to make this a game. And so Indiana on offense, Al Durham missed a three-pointer. It was a good look, but he missed it. And Joey Brunk got a really tough rebound and then was able to fight through 3 Nebraska players to hang on to the ball and get fouled. And it was exactly the kind of tough, gritty, winning play that you need to make to win road games like this. Now, he got fouled. He would miss the free throw, and then Trayce Jackson-Davis got the offensive rebound and scored. That made it 75-65 Indiana, and it really, in the moment, seemed to kind of reaffirm control of the game for the Hoosiers after Nebraska had cut it to 8. That was the closest they had been since halftime. And those two guys all night long were the two best players on the court for Indiana. They controlled this game. And Trayce later on would knock down a couple of clutch free throws when it was 80-74. That very easily could have been a banner moment. Those were huge free throws by him, which really kind of sealed it and shut the door. But Trayce Jackson-Davis on the night, 18 points, 13 boards, 4 assists, and a block shot. Joey Brunk, 16 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, and 2 blocks. You know, Nebraska would end up, like I said, getting it to 6 later, but that play, when it pushed it back out to 10, it really just meant that Nebraska had too far to go to come back. And it's those little plays like that, again, it's toughness, it's grit, it's getting a key rebound, it's, you know, getting a key putback. That's the kind of stuff that, especially when you're not getting great play from your guards, and Indiana got decent play from its guards, some good stretches, but especially down the stretch, you know, some decisions by Rob Finney, some decisions by Al Durham were a little questionable. Indiana's big guys stepped up, made the plays that they need to ice the game. Tip of the cap to Joey Brunk and Trayce Jackson-Davis. They were great, and they combined for tonight's banner moment. All right, our banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, a company that was founded by an IU grad that remains based in Indianapolis. And these guys are so supportive of IU athletics, of the football team, of the basketball team, and really just the whole athletic department. And that's a great reason to support them. But an even better reason is that their stuff is awesome. It's really comfortable even after you wash it. They've got unique logos that you can't find anywhere else. The Bison logo, of course. They've got, you know, the Script Indiana. I actually am wearing, I've got the Script Indiana long sleeve tee. And I've mentioned before, like, I'm really particular about my long sleeve tees. I want them to fit a certain way. And this one is probably the most comfortable long sleeve tee that I own. I will probably buy 2 or 3 more of them just so that I have them in a rotation for when they get dirty, so I have some on backup, because I like the shirt that much, because, you know, I love the logo. It's so comfortable, and I just love supporting Home Field Apparel, and their stuff is great. And so we recommend that you go to homefieldapparel.com, check out their entire collection of Indiana gear. They work with a lot of other schools now because, you know, these guys are great, and they're smart, and they're good businessmen. But they started with Indiana. Indiana is the most expansive collection that they have, and you will definitely find something there for yourself or for the Indiana fan in your life. And when you go, use the promo code Assembly20 at checkout. That will get you 20% off your entire order. That's Assembly20 for 20% off your entire order. Go to homefieldapparel.com today. Get the most unique and comfortable IU apparel anywhere. All right, well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And we will start with Andy Bottoms. Andy, your Bottoms line on this Indiana road victory. I'm just going to say that all night because it's fun to say.
As you should, as you should. I'll go back to the first half a bit, where basically a lineup came with the lineup of, or a run came with the lineup of Trayce, Joey, Rob, Armaan, and Jerome on the floor, and that really got IU. I hesitate to say control, because I never really felt too at ease at various points during this game, but that group really did a nice job in the middle to latter part of the first half. Got IU a lead back after some struggles early on, and credit to some of the seniors that came in after them for actually expanding that lead, because I was a little bit skeptical of, can you really take this group out? They're playing so well, and that group, Devontae and Jerod came in, made some plays down the stretch of the first half, and did a nice job. And then offensively, IU really excelled to start the second half. I think 10 of their first 12 possessions they scored on, and then went into a just horrendous, albeit not unfamiliar lull offensively, where they really abandoned getting the ball inside, weren't playing as fast, settled for jumpers, maybe because a few went in earlier in the half, and turned the ball over, struggled to contain dribblers, and lost focus a little bit. They regained it back enough at the end to win the game, and they had created enough separation with that night. I think 19 is the most that the lead got to in the second half. But so it was, as you said, a road win. You can't downplay that at all, given the importance of that in the Big Ten race and just in IU's tournament resume, any way that you want to look at it. But this was another performance with this team where it's Jekyll and Hyde. You never know what you're going to get from minute to minute. You had some really good stretches of play on both ends of the floor, and then you had some really unfocused stretches of play on both ends of the floor that allowed it to be a little closer than many would have liked it to be. But at this point, you set out on a week where you had 2 road games, and I think anybody would have said it would be good to get one, and they managed to do that. And now they've got a tough test coming up at home against Michigan State, but good to be able to get there. And perhaps the travel delays of not getting there fulfilled Ryan's wish of changing up the road trip routine. So Mother Nature stepped in to get something different going for the team, and it seemed to work, I guess.
Somewhere he's taking credit for this, because he talked about, was that, I don't know, it was a Assembly Call Radio.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's somewhere. He's at dinner right now. I said they needed to get the plane stranded. I'm so glad they listened to me.
Yep. Time has proven me right on virtually everything.
No, but he did. I mean, he did say that. So I guess we'll give him some kind of credit. Now, I do want to mention, Indiana won this game by 8 points, and look, sometimes to win on the road, you maybe need to do some things that you don't do normally. Now, today, Indiana hit 8 3-pointers. And I thought, early on, at one point in the game, they were shooting like 42% from three-point range. And I thought a lot of the shot selection was smart. I thought when they hit that lull offensively in the second half, they started taking three-pointers too quickly. They started settling for those possessions where they just passed the ball around the perimeter, didn't get it inside. And so I thought, they missed some, even though they missed a couple of good looks. Some of them were really questionable on a night when you were doing so much damage inside. But, Andy, Indiana won by 8. And just off the top of my head, I can remember Deron Davis hitting a 17-foot jump shot, Trayce Jackson Davis hitting a 19-foot jump shot, Joey Brunk hitting a floater, and Joey Brunk hitting like a 15-foot jump shot. So those 4 plays right there, the difference in the game. But look, sometimes you need some plays like that on the road. But I say that, but really, we've got to underscore, credit to the big guys. And tonight, I'm going to throw Justin Smith in there too, because I thought, outside of a few questionable three-pointers that he took, I thought he really did a nice job offensively of getting on the offensive glass. He had 3 offensive rebounds. I think all 3 of them he turned into points. So you got that production from him, the 15 points. We talked about Trayce. We talked about Brunk. Deron came in, only played 6 minutes, but had 4 points and 3 rebounds. Had that nice little hook shot, had the nice little jumper. So it was nice to see the big guys really step up and control against a Nebraska team that, frankly, just isn't very good at guarding down there. And look, Indiana's not going to be able to do this every night. We know that, other Big Ten teams are going to be better at containing them inside. But this was a night where the big guys needed to do some work down low, and they did it. And that ultimately was the difference in the game for Indiana.
Well, yeah, you look across those four guys that you mentioned with Trayce, Joey, Justin, and Duran. They had 53 points and 28 rebounds between them, and I think when you look at, there was a lull in the first half from an offensive standpoint, and there was one in the second half. I mean, the common thread between those is typically a heavy mix of turnovers and missed and possessions that end in 3-point shots. So those are when the offense bogged down and didn't play well. Those were the common threads really on either side. But yeah, I thought the big guys all played really well, and it was a game that you probably want to see them get more out of the guards, but it was a chance for IU to exploit a clear advantage against Nebraska, and they did a good job of that. That was, one of the things I think we talked about leading into the game was, if you're not getting the ball inside to those guys, you're putting yourself at a real disadvantage, because they did struggle. Trayce in particular, he was the guy who often got put in a position to try to, guard somebody a little bit smaller, and gave up a number of layups as a result. So you had to be able to use that to your advantage, both on the glass and offensively. And I thought they did a good job of doing that. Really dominated on the boards. And like I said, 53 between those four guys was a pretty impressive showing. So the guard play still is an enigma a little bit from moment to moment, but you got to give those guys a lot of credit for just being active as much as anything else, and using the offensive glass to create some additional points and possessions over the course of the game.
And ladies and gentlemen, our special guest for the evening is here, Alex Bozich from Inside the Hall, taking a break from posting content over at InsideTheHall.com to come join us. Alex, your opening thoughts on this Indiana road victory.
Well, first off, thanks for having me, guys. It's a privilege to be here. I looked at the Rutgers game in many ways as progress for Indiana, because they were a lot more competitive than they were in the first two road games. And as much as maybe people didn't want to read about it or hear it, but I felt like there were some things they could build on from that game, particularly defensively. They played really well. And I thought for a good part of tonight's game, they were locked in on both ends of the court. It didn't necessarily always feel that way, particularly in the second half with the field goal drought. And I think it was over 8 minutes, 8 and some change, where they didn't score a field goal, but they never really kind of let Nebraska, I know they did let them get within 8 and then 6 a couple times in the last 80 seconds of the game, but they never really kind of let them seize control back of the game. And I thought that was important. It's never going to be, I don't feel like in this Big Ten season, a situation where you just go on the road and completely annihilate somebody, especially with this Indiana team that we've seen these long droughts offensively. But this was definitely progress in that. So many times with this team that we've kind of seen them give control back to the opponent, and this time they were able to hold on. So just a really big win for a lot of reasons. I know one thing I wrote about was, this is really the last, leading into the game, this is really the last chance for Indiana to take a bad loss from a resume perspective. So just to get out of there, whether it's a 1-point win, an 8-point win, a 20-point win, to get out of there with a win, especially with what's ahead in terms of the schedule. I think they've got the second toughest schedule in the country remaining. So to be 4-3 at this point with 14 wins, I think they got to be feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah, no question. And look, I want to spend some time, and we'll save it for a little bit later, talking about the guard play, because I do have, I have some concerns about, I don't think the way Indiana won this game tonight, I don't think this is a formula that you're going to be able to take on the road to beat other teams. But it was a good formula to beat Nebraska. I thought Indiana did a better job tonight than they did in the first game, handling the way that Nebraska spreads you out defensively. They were leaky at times, but overall they were better containing dribblers. Overall, they were better helping to three-point shooters, which was nice to see. And Andy, as we talked about, they really, really exploited that advantage inside. Now, again, you're just in the rest of the road games, you're not going to get that. So I think if for Indiana to pick up another road win, they're going to have a little bit of a different formula. And, so we'll talk about some of the guards, but one of the guards that I do want to talk about in a positive way is Armaan Franklin, who I thought really gave Indiana some good minutes. In the first half, I thought during his first stretch of play in the second half, he was also really good. He finishes with 8 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, a block, a steal, was 2 for 5 from downtown. Now, look, he did some of the things that he does. He had some hand check fouls. He, airballed the 3-pointer. His jersey got grabbed, but he dribbled the ball. I think Ryan texted us. He's like, I've never seen a guy dribble the ball off his foot twice in one breakaway. So he had some of those plays. But what really impressed me about him, Andy, was this was a game where Nebraska was giving our guards opportunities. And, in a lot of situations, our guards were hesitant to take them, it looked like. And Armaan, at least, was really out there being aggressive in a game that I thought called for aggression from the guards. So you're going to take some good, you're going to take some bad, but I thought his approach to the game was really impressive, which I'm sure is what Archie saw, which is why he gave him 23 minutes, and I thought his activity was really important. And I thought when Indiana was really playing well, it seemed in the first half and second half, he was in there making plays. And that's good. If he can start doing that, that is part of the formula for this team being able to compete better on the road.
Yeah, he was really one of the only subs. We've kind of, everybody's beaten the tighter rotation conversation into the ground at this point. Not as much as the shooting conversation, but close. And he was really one of the only guys who over the last, I think, 8 or so minutes it was kind of 6 guys, I think, who played. Jerome got in a little bit at the end. But no, he did some good things at the beginning of the second half. He came out and had a nice block that ended up being called a jump ball, got IU the ball back. And I thought in general played some solid defense in terms of recovering out to shooters and getting out there. He is still a little handsy defensively, so that got him into a little bit of trouble. But overall, I thought on that end of the floor, he was solid. And it was the door for him to play more was opened up because Al, I felt, really struggled to contain dribblers on that end. So I think that earned Armaan some minutes eventually, and he shot it confidently. I think there's just there are many ways where he played like a freshman, which is kind of what you would obviously expect from somebody like that. I think the shot selection at times can use a little bit of work, but he does have a lot of confidence in himself and is willing to step in scenarios, isn't afraid to take big shots. But I think he airballed another baseline jumper. Maybe it was somebody else, but I think it might've been him in the first half.
It was him.
A couple things, a few turnovers, more positive than negative though, which is good. Progression from him in a road environment. And I think he's a guy that, Devontae didn't get a ton of minutes, even though I thought he actually played relatively well in his stint in the start of the second half, but he only ended up with 14 minutes. So I think if Armaan can continue on the trajectory of improvement that he's at, the opportunities there on a team that doesn't have a lot of guard depth and in some ways I think is looking for somebody to really step up and be more reliable.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, it's it can be kind of a thin line to try and toe at times because, you don't want him trying to do too much. And yet, you want guys on the road to be aggressive, to play free. And that's kind of what I thought he brought to it. I thought Rob and Al were a little tentative at times. And I just thought Armaan was out there to make plays. And I feel like sometimes on the road, having a guy with that mentality, even if he's going to make some mistakes, can just kind of help shake things up and help give you energy. And I thought that was really important that he brought that tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because that was when I was watching, that run in the first half where they kind of had some of the younger guys in there. I think Jerome hit a couple threes. It seemed like the guys were just kind of out there playing basketball instead of trying to avoid making a mistake. They were just trying to make plays, and you kind of saw the confidence building there for a small segment of that game. And that was really, to me, they were down 9 at one point, I think, in the first half. And then to be able to flip that and going to halftime with the lead. And then it kind of early in the second half, they really started out well. And that's when they built that 19-point lead, I think, on 2 separate occasions. But yeah, it's almost like when the offense isn't going well, guys kind of freeze up and they're afraid to take a shot. But then once a couple of 3-pointers went down in that first half, I think they made 6, which for this team to make 6 3-pointers in one half is a pretty significant accomplishment. Thank you.
Sometimes it feels like there's weeks that if they made 6 3-pointers, it would feel like an accomplishment.
Exactly. But you could just kind of, I don't know if you guys saw that, but there was just, kind of a sequence of possessions there. I don't have the exact times and all that written down, but it was just a kind of a different look in terms of just the confidence. And, one guy made a 3 and then all of a sudden the next guy is confident when he takes a shot. And I think a lot of times with a young team, particularly with some young guys, an experience like this, especially for Armaan and Jerome, can give them maybe a shot in the arm to know that they can do it in a situation like this. It may not ever come as easy again the rest of the season on the road as it did tonight in Nebraska, but to at least have that taste of winning away from home and to know that it is possible, I think can be a real positive moving forward with this team.
Yep. Yeah, and you mentioned Jerome, and we'll talk about him because I thought he provided Indiana with a real lift in the first half. Didn't play a ton in the second half, but I thought his minutes really important. Last point on this before we break. So that lineup in the first half, it was Armaan, Rob, Jerome, Trayce, and Joey. They were really the ones that built the lead, and I was disappointed when they subbed, but I get it. Joey was tired. I think Rob had picked up his second foul, and actually they subbed and then pushed the lead out. I think the guys who came in, Jerod made a couple of plays. They ended up extending the lead out. So it worked, even though I would still, I would like to see Archie's bias be a little bit more towards letting lineups that are rolling play, but I get it in this instance. I don't think that 5 played in the second half together, did they?
I didn't chart it, but given the number of minutes that Jerome played, I would find it somewhat hard to believe that they would have, for at least not for any extended period of time.
Yeah, which I would have liked to see, because lineups that have had a real rhythm have been few and far between. Since the calendar turned from November. So I would have liked to see that group play more. But Indiana won by 8, so these are obviously just little nitpicks. But coming up, as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's victory over Nebraska, I'll point out today's meaningful moment that you might have missed. It's going to be about Al Durham. And then we will go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You are listening to the Assembly Call after an IU road win. Stick with us.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Thank you, Jordan. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Alex Bozich from Inside the Hall. We are breaking down Indiana's 82-74 road victory over Nebraska on Saturday night. And guys, it is time for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed. And now we've mentioned the struggles of the guards, and I thought Armaan, brought a lot of energy. I thought the other guards were extremely up and down tonight. And I want to talk about Al Durham because, he got pulled early in both halves. The first half, it happened because he got beat off the drive. And Archie had talked about on the pregame, we have got to contain dribblers. If there's one thing I can have tonight, it's contain dribblers. And as soon as the first guy got beat off the dribble, he yanked him. And I thought Al had a lot of up and downs defensively. I thought, offensively, he kind of struggled to get going. 7 points, 1 for 6 from the field, had 1 assist, no rebounds, a couple of turnovers. It just wasn't a very productive game for him. But I thought he had a couple of moments that were actually really important. One is at the 11:45 mark coming out of the under 12 timeout. It was 68-54, and that's when Nebraska had kind of cut into the lead, and I think all of us, even though we're up 14, we're starting to feel a little bit uneasy. And they ran that little play, where Al can come off the curl screens at the elbow. It actually didn't work the first time, but they reset it. He ended up getting the ball, getting fouled, made both free throws. It pushed it back up to 16, and it just felt like an important possession coming out of the timeout to get a bucket and stem a little bit of the Nebraska momentum. But the play that really stood out to me is at the 6.5-minute mark, Indiana was up by 8, kind of nursing that lead. Rob Finney took a 3 early in the shot clock, one of several questionable decisions by him late in the game. He got immediately yanked from the game, and on the next possession, Al was extremely diligent about getting the ball inside. Dribbled to find a better passing angle, got it inside to Joey Brunk, and then on the other end, had one of his best defensive possessions of the game. He contained Cam Mack, did not let him get into the lane. That ended up forcing a pass by Cam Mack at the end of the shot clock to the little walk-on guy that missed a three-pointer. And it was just an important
That man has a
sequence.
name, Jerod.
I know, but I don't
remember
his name. Sorry. I know I'm disrespecting the walk-on. I apologize. But it was big. And then 2 possessions later, he got it inside to Brunk for a layup, and it was 73-62. And I think it was like one of only 2 out of 13 possessions they got the ball inside. So, outside of that, he had some struggles, but I thought that sequence was really important because it was another point where Nebraska had it down to 8. They could have pushed it out. Archie clearly had something he wanted them to do offensively, which is why he yanked Rob, and I thought Al took it upon himself to get it done. And so on an uneven night for him, I still thought when someone needed to step up and just kind of settle things down, I thought that sequence from Al was really important. And look, we need that to be more the norm, not the exception from the guards. But I thought it was important in Indiana being able to maintain that lead and just not letting Nebraska get momentum, Andy.
Yeah, I think as we've talked about, I do think he struggled a lot defensively, more so than offensively. There are a couple questionable shots, but that sequence, I remember that defensive possession specifically where he really did a nice job on Cam Mack, and that's kind of what you look at and you're like, man, that was a fantastic job. Why can't
he played a half step off of him? Like
why can't that be the norm? Yeah, they're doing that because really at that point, most of what Nebraska was getting was going to the basket anyway. They weren't shooting as many threes. They were really trying to go to the rim. So I thought he did a nice job there. And then you mentioned the other play late in the game when they were really struggling to even just get the ball off the floor, where he was more aggressive and kind of ripped through. Made an aggressive move, ended up getting fouled, missed both free throws, but was more aggressive just in terms of taking care of the basketball and trying to get it up the court instead of getting trapped in the corner and some of those kinds of things. So yeah, it was definitely an uneven performance for him. I think you could say that really of all of the guards as you go down the list tonight, but it did make a few key plays. As you mentioned, kept finding himself in the corner for threes, which is not typically where he shoots it best, as opposed to on the wing where it seems like that's where the majority of his threes go in.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Rob had 4 turnovers. He had one play in the half court where he tried to pass fake and then just threw it right into the Nebraska guy's hand, and it led to a run out the other way. I thought he had a quick trigger on 3-pointers. I was disappointed in his decision making late, because you think back to the first Nebraska game and he was a real catalyst late. And tonight I just thought that wasn't the kind of steady Rob that we're used to seeing. Alex, any thoughts on Indiana's upperclassmen guards who each had their moments tonight, but overall were pretty uneven?
Yeah, I mean, without Armaan Franklin stepping forward like he did, I mean, I think this is, no question, a bad night overall just for Indiana's guards. You look at the statistics from the game, it was primarily, at least the points were primarily distributed among the front court players. And we knew going in that Indiana's kind of goal in this game was going to be, get the ball inside. They have, a decided advantage in the post. But yeah, I mean, I think the one problem and with the rotation just in general right now is on a game-to-game basis, there's just no consistency on which players are going to show up. And when you only have 4 guards, there's not a lot of mulligan, a lot of different things you can try. It's just basically you got to ride those guys as best as you can. And they missed some. The guards also missed some free throws. I thought that was, it could have potentially cost Indiana in the game in the end, but they were able to overcome that. But Finney, I think, had some good plays early, but I agree with you. His shot selection wasn't great. The turnovers that continue, I think, to be the most alarming is when this team kind of just dribbles the ball if it's foot or just makes a pass that's not there. I mean, Rob had a pass in the second half, I think it was, where he just kind of jumped up in the air and the Nebraska guy was standing there right there with his hands up, and it's like, where are you throwing the ball? At this point of the season, you just can't have that. The other guy, I don't know how much you want to talk about. I mean, Devontae Green again kind of had a night to forget. I think he finished with 3 points, didn't really do much. It kind of looked like early on that he might end up in the same position in the second half that he did it late against Northwestern, where he was just going to be completely benched because he wasn't really giving Indiana anything. I thought he was just sometimes just casual with the ball, and we say that it's a good thing, I guess, when he's making a bunch of 3-pointers, but it drives you nuts, I think, to watch when it just looks like he's careless with the ball and just kind of out there playing pickup at times. But I think, I guess, the glass half full look at this game is Indiana was really got probably a C game at best from all of Finney, Durham, and Green, and still was able to go on the road and win. So maybe that's something that was a good thing from this one.
Yeah, I mean, Devontae's, he had a stretch of poor play in the first half that coincided with Nebraska's big run. And his poor decisions are really the catalyst. I will say this for Rob in his defense. He came out and played well early. I think he had 5 of Indiana's first 7 points or 9 points, whatever it was. And that's important on the road. I thought he was a real settling presence early, which to me, it was such a stark contrast between then how he played late. But he did get those minutes early. The other meaningful moment that I want to talk about is Jerome Hunter, who I thought really provided some good minutes early on. Andy, as you know, I texted you guys and said the breakout was coming tonight. I just kind of had a feeling, and it was looking really good there for a while. I said
once that first 3 went down, but then when the second one flew across the rim and hit the backboard on the other side of the basket, then
it did. But then I was feeling good again.
Unwavering, but I just
he made the next one 2 for 3. Hey, I predicted 12 points and 4 rebounds. He had 6 at halftime. It was looking good, and they didn't play that much in the second half. But what impressed me about him is as soon as he got in, I thought he really, because I know he's a guy Archie has talked about, like, hey, just kind of get out of the way on offense. I thought he really showed an understanding of what Indiana wanted to do offensively. The first possession he got the ball, he immediately got it into Trayce Jackson-Davis, and then Trayce kicked it out to him, and he made that three-pointer. But he was determined to get it inside and did. And then the next possession, he got the ball and backed his man down to basically create a post opportunity, which he's good at, and then found Armaan Franklin for a wide-open shot. Armaan missed it. But again, for a young guy who's kind of getting in, still getting himself acclimated, getting comfortable, I thought this was one of the best sequences he's had of coming in the game and getting right into the flow. And, and again, he made another 3. He was 2 for 3 on the night. Hopefully that is a sign of things to come. It felt like he had more to give tonight and just didn't really have the opportunities in the second half, Alex. But again, I continue to think that his development can be one of the biggest game changers for this team moving forward because of how dynamic he can be offensively, and we see these little glimpses of it. It hasn't been consistent yet. Obviously, this wasn't the big breakout, anything like that. But in 8 minutes, I thought it was really, again, something to build on, which now 2 out of the last 3 games, I feel like we've come out of it saying that, and that's a good sign.
The thing I like about him the most is there's just he doesn't hesitate when he comes in, right? He's going to try to make something happen. Now, there may be some times where he takes a shot and you're like, maybe that wasn't the best shot, but
yeah, today it was in the flow.
Right. It was definitely in the flow. He was able to make 2 threes. But I think this team's ceiling is, how high it can be, I think is in many ways determined on just how much Jerome can give this team. I think he's a guy that you want to give the minutes to because there's a future in this program. I view him as a building block moving forward for IU. And in many ways, he hasn't shot the ball particularly well as a freshman, but, I saw it firsthand watching him as a high school player, particularly on the AAU circuit. He was just a guy that was really smooth with the ball, never lacked confidence. And I think that's carried over. Even, the best thing to me is that he comes in and he still isn't afraid to shoot and always is trying to make some kind of contribution. Now, we'll see if, that you can't always do that again. You can't always get away with some of the wild shots that he's taken against some of these better teams coming up. But, to come in and play 8 minutes and knock down a couple threes, I mean, those are definitely pivotal shots that really contributed to the win.
Well, and I think the thing that you've started to see from him, at least the last couple games, is there for a while, he basically was only coming in and shooting threes. But I thought there were even a couple times today where he did take those, took those few early, but he didn't keep forcing threes. He would, shot fake. He would try to get inside and probe the defense a little bit that way. So I thought you're starting to see him be more comfortable doing things other than just come on the floor and shoot, which is a really positive sign. I think speaks a little bit to just some of the rust coming off from of him. And so I think that's a positive development. And I was surprised that he didn't play more in the second half because I thought he played well in the first half. And when he did get in at the end of the game, it was not necessarily meaningless because I don't think any IU fan had totally exhaled at that point. But he played really good defense on that last possession with Cheatham, where he really closed out on him well, didn't let him get a clean look, and didn't get himself in a position to make a foul when the guy basically dove into him while he was shooting. So I think he's really made some strides on the defensive end as well, which is what is as likely to earn him additional playing time as well as you look forward.
And the other thing about Jerome, I'll say, is just from kind of watching him and knowing his story as a player and how he's kind of evolved through his high school career and talking to people close to him. when he first started out in high school, he was a guy that was primarily playing around the basket, 5 feet and in, playing on the block. And even, later in his high school career, he was a guy that posted up a lot and played a lot around the basket. And a lot of the things he's being asked to do now at IU are more focused with, having him on the perimeter and with the ball. And that's been an adjustment for him. He's always been a pretty good shooter, but I think he's in many ways most comfortable, operating around, in and around the basket. I think a lot of, people thought going into college, I know Michigan kind of recruited him pretty hard as well. And they viewed him as a stretch four, a guy that could really play the four, and he hasn't been asked to do that here. So there's been an adjustment, but I think, the thing I like about that is he's been willing to embrace kind of the change in terms of the style of play of what he was asked to do in high school to college. And if he can continue to work on his ball handling, I think later in his college career, he's a guy that could play 3 positions. I mean, he could potentially be a 2, or he could be a 3. I think he's 3 is where he's been playing mostly now, but I also think he can play some 4 down the road too, because of his ability to stretch. I mean, ideally, in today's game of college basketball, you want a 4-man that can stretch the floor and shoot threes. That's not how Indiana's playing right now, but I think when you look at what you want this program to be down the line, you definitely want a guy that can shoot the ball at the 4 position. And I think Jerome could be that one day.
Yeah, you didn't need it tonight because you could bludgeon Nebraska with Trayce and Joey and Justin, and it worked. But like we said, the formula for tonight was great, and you wouldn't trade it for anything because it's a road win, and that's extremely valuable, and we are ecstatic to get it. But just don't expect that this formula is going to win in the future. It's going to have to be a different way. Andy, any meaningful moments stand out to you that we haven't gotten to?
There was only one other one that I wrote down. It was at the beginning of the second half. It was right after I referenced that play that Armaan made, but the next defensive possession after that, one of the 2 Nebraska big guys grabbed an offensive rebound, and Finney basically sprinted down from the top of the key, forced a jump ball. And just thought that really set the tone for how IU played defensively when they extended the lead. That kind of went away a little bit after that, but I thought they just came out of the locker room really aggressive defensively and did a really nice job on that end of the floor. And I just thought that was, the kind of thing that you can expect Rob to do from a defensive standpoint, that while he did have some other struggles over the course of the game, that was a really just kind of a hustle play, if nothing else, to be able to get there and get the tie up.
One other meaningful moment that actually happened like long before the game that I want to mention is, I don't know if folks listened to Archie Miller when he addressed the media, but he spent most of his time on his address to the media ahead of the Nebraska game talking about Trayce and talking about conversations that he had with Trayce as Trayce is kind of going through this rough patch in Big Ten play. And, said, had a good conversation with him last night, and it sounded like, they really had a heart-to-heart. And so it's nice to see that and then see Trayce respond, again, with a great stat line. And this is a matchup that he should dominate, but this is still a freshman, going on the road in a tough place. He's coming off a couple of bad games. They've got travel issues. Like, there's all kinds of reasons why a freshman might struggle or shrink from the moment. And instead, Trayce leads the team in minutes with 36, leads the team in points, leads the team in rebounds, and is just a rock out there. Now, his awareness on defense, he gets lost sometimes. He gave up some buckets. Like, that's all well and good. But he was outstanding tonight. And so it's nice when you see some of these things that the coaches talk about, and then it happens on the floor. And obviously, whatever he said to Trayce, it worked and got Trayce refocused to be able to come out on the road like this and play well. Quickly, let's go through some numbers that stand out. To me, you look at this, there's one number that just leaps off the page. And yes, the 8 3-pointers is important. That was huge for Indiana, but 21 assists, guys. 21 assists on 31 made field goals for a team that is in the 200s in assist rate, has an assist rate under 50%, which is not good. You look at why Archie's teams were good at Dayton, their assist rates were 59, 60, 61%. That's what good offenses are able to do. And tonight, Indiana did that with 4 guys having 4 or more assists, 6 guys having at least 2 assists. So it wasn't just one guy breaking down the defense. It was, Andy, a real team effort, and you saw a lot of really good post passing. Again, Trayce had 4 assists. Joey had a couple of assists. And the guards obviously had, some assists getting the ball into those guys and also on some breakaway opportunities. But that, to me, was the most important thing, because that 21 assist number, it was indicative of, number one, shot making. Indiana made some shots to help push that total up, but the ball was really moving. And I didn't think Indiana was as aggressive with the dribble as they could have been, but I thought they moved the ball really well with the pass.
Yeah, that was definitely the number that jumped out. I think that's believe that I saw somebody, I think it was John Blau, tweet out that the highest total they had previous in the season, I think, was 19 against Princeton. So from a rate standpoint, I would be this might actually be lower because that was probably a slower paced game. This one had, I think, close to 80 possessions in total. But yeah, that was really the big thing. And like you said, some of that was, being able to actually get guys on the receiving end of passes to actually make shots. But I did think as well, it was a sign of good movement, and being able to feed the post and few lob plays in transition that they finished. The one from Devontae to Joey was really good. And even passing among some of the big guys was solid as well. So from a number standpoint, that was the one that really leaps off the page. At least it was a lot different than the prior matchup. The rebounding numbers are good in IU's favor, but that was really no different than what IU had done to them in the first matchup, and was less of a surprise just given the size differential between the two teams.
The number that isn't good is the 16 turnovers for Indiana. That was a key for Archie coming into the game. Indiana did not execute that. But I will say, Nebraska was only able to turn that into 11 fast break points. And this is a team that wants to play with pace. They want to get out and run. And there were a couple of notable, moments when Indiana did not get back in transition. In fact, when the game turned, when they were up 19 and then Nebraska started coming back, it was after a really bad transition possession that, that Archie got mad about. And Justin was a little late getting over to a 3-point shooter. But Indiana only giving up 11 fast break points on the 16 turnovers. I thought for the most part, the transition defense was pretty good, and I thought that number was indicative of that. Devontae had a nice play in transition, getting back and getting a block, and Indiana was just able to not give up quite as many wide open threes. And Nebraska did miss a few, but having 16 turnovers bad, limiting Nebraska to only 11 fast break points, good enough. Not great, but good enough.
Yeah, I just felt like with the turnovers, they came in bunches, and like I said, in the stretch in both the first and the second half where the offense really struggled, those are the stretches that were littered with turnovers. That's obviously not surprising to say that you didn't score a lot of points when you weren't even getting shots, but just in terms of when they took good care of the basketball, because on a night when they did make some good passes and set up to have that many assists, there were some stretches of really ugly play from both teams. I was surprised that Nebraska didn't have more turnovers, quite frankly, although they had 7 in the second half. There was a really ugly stretch where neither team could really take care of the basketball on that end. So I do think that is concerning, but at the same time, I think that IU really was aggressive in trying to pick the tempo up during that stretch where they again, I hesitate to say they seized control of the game, but where they at least got back in front in the game. I thought a lot of that was really pushing the ball and getting the ball entered into the post quickly, as opposed to waiting until the defense is set. I thought they were really effective at that. So maybe the turnovers in some ways are a side effect of really trying to push this team to play a little bit faster and set up opportunities where they can, get the ball into the post a little bit easier just by beating people down the floor. So difficult to say, but if you're looking for a number that is not so good, that's definitely the one to focus on. 9 in the second half, struggled with the press there a bit at the end of the game. So I don't think there'll be a win for this team that will be without warts at this point.
No, this was beautiful, Andy. This was as beautiful as they're going to come, and it was awesome. It's always concerning when I look over in the chat and someone says, "Is anyone listening to the guys talking?" There's some fierce debates going on in the chat mob right now. So keep it clean in there.
I think I was hoping that maybe that meant just like people after the game, but if you're taking it to mean us, then fair enough.
Yeah. Okay, coming up on the assembly call, we're going to hand out our game balls. Then we will hit any other lingering storylines from this game, and then look ahead to next week as Indiana goes back home to play Michigan State. Then it'll be time for last call. That's next on the assembly call. Stick with us.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
Thank you, Tim. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. While you are there, make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 7,000 of your fellow IU fans have subscribed. You can also text IU to 66866 to subscribe to the newsletter. That is, text IU to 66866 to subscribe to the newsletter. All right, I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Alex Bozich from Inside the Hall, and we are breaking down Indiana's first Big Ten road win of the season as the Hoosiers beat Nebraska 82-74. Time now for the game balls, and I'm just going to hit lead off on this one and say that Trayce Jackson-Davis is getting my game ball. Talked about him in the banner moment, talked about him in the last segment. He led Indiana in minutes, was really a dominant force and very efficient. You would actually like to see him get more field goal attempts than 7, but he made 6 of them. And I thought he knocked down 2 key free throws late, and it seemed like late in the game, every time Nebraska would miss a shot and it looked like they had someone there to possibly get a rebound and get a second chance, Trayce would scoop it up. And he had 13 rebounds, 11 of them defensive. He was just awesome. He was the best player on the floor today. And I thought his numbers could have been even better if Indiana didn't go through stretches where they couldn't, get him the ball. And to be fair, he's got to get better at holding position and getting position and doing some of those things. But it still feels like there's more meat on the bone. Like, it still feels like Indiana could get more creative in getting him the ball. But tonight it worked. He and Joey really combined down low. But I give him the edge for my game ball. It goes to Trayce. Andy, who gets your game ball?
Yeah, I would go with him as well. You look across he led the team in points, rebounds, tied for the lead in assists, had a block as well on a night when IU had 8 blocks, I believe, which was another good statistical note. Played more minutes than anybody else, and I believe in looking at the Ken Pom page for this, he was the MVP of the game. Had an offensive rating for the game of 175, which I feel like is pretty.
Is that good?
Yes, that seems good. It seems good.
Alex, who gets your game ball? It's already been awarded to Trayce because 2 out of 3. So feel free to give someone an honorable mention.
Be nice to the guest, Jerod. Don't say, yeah, Alex, we're throwing it for your opinion, but it doesn't actually matter is basically what Jared's trying to tell you right now.
I mean, it would be hard not to give it to Trayce, but I'll go with Joey Brunk, just because, he's been, early in the season, he was really kind of a guy that particularly against UConn, a lot of people criticize his play early in that game, but he's been pretty consistent. I mean, I know he hasn't scored in double figures a lot, but you kind of look at his game log. He's mostly scored 8, 9, 10 points over the last 2 months of basketball, and then tonight he kind of breaks out in a way and scores 16 points, makes 7 of his 8 threes. I just think he plays so hard and brings consistent effort. He's not the most athletic guy, he's not the most talented guy, but he brings the same energy, and I think he's, as much as we kind of like to criticize the upperclassmen, the lack of leadership at times from guys like Devontae Green, Deron Davis, and even Al Durham and Justin Smith, at times as well. We sometimes forget that, even though Joey's new to the program, he is a junior, he is an upperclassman, and he's been a guy that I think has been consistent presence on the court in terms of his, production. At least you know what you're going to get from him from an effort standpoint every game. And when he does, contribute, he's usually an efficient offensive player. And tonight, he made, like you mentioned earlier, it was weird seeing those guys take those long jump shots. It was fun when they went in, but
it was weirder seeing him go in, to be honest, but there was.
Well, yeah, the whole first half was weird. The fact that they made 6 3-pointers as a team, and I think Joey, Deron, and Trayce all made like a long 2-foot jumper right in this game. I mean, that's like that's
8 of our points were on long jumpers by those guys, and we won by 8, as we mentioned earlier. So sometimes
if they wouldn't have made those, if they wouldn't have made those shots and lost, we would have been saying like those are the worst shots in basketball, because they are. But for a night they went in. So hopefully, like you said, there's a lot of things about this game that aren't that you're not going to be able to carry over and win in future road games. I have a sneaking suspicion that long 2-point jumpers by Indiana's 3 front court players are right at the top of the list of things that you can't count on in future road games.
No, but they were part of putting a road win in the bank, so we will take it. Yeah, and look, Joey to me is like a very close second to Trayce because I thought he was really good. And you're right. My banner moment on Assembly Call Radio was basically lauding Joey for becoming our most consistent contributor. And that's not great for this team. I think you want him to be like maybe your fourth or fifth most productive guy. But credit to him for being just being that rock that Indiana can count on. And here's a sentence I never thought I would say. Joey Brunk's shot making at the beginning of the second half was really important in Indiana building some early momentum, because I think Indiana was up by 5 at halftime, right? And then they really quickly pushed that lead out. And a lot of it was because, Joey hit that floater, then he hit that little shot. Shot making from Joey Brunk. It's what we've all been asking for, and he delivered tonight. So,
got to give the people what they want.
Got to give the people what they want. Okay, so Trayce Jackson-Davis, that is his 8th game ball. I think the chat mob, it was fairly well split between Trayce and Joey. There are some hardcore Joey Brunk fans in there. Jennifer she will yell at you if you don't give a game ball to Joey Brunk. So we gotta be careful there. Any lingering storylines from this game for you guys? We talked about the guards. We talked about some of the guys off the bench. Maybe the one other guy that we haven't spent a ton of time talking about is Justin Smith, who was very productive. I mentioned this earlier. I thought early he had a few really shaky possessions. He had a really casual turnover. But I thought once he really focused in and started taking the ball to the basket, and getting out in transition, getting on the offensive glass, like those 3 things, he's become, he's good at all of them. And so I thought when he focused on that, he was an efficient offensive player. He did make the 1-3, but some of those other shots, it's just, you don't want to say they're wasted possessions, but you certainly feel like, especially when it comes early in the shot clock, that you could get a better shot than that from him. He just hasn't proven yet that he's a consistent enough shooter. So, but all those warts in there, he played 32 minutes and he was a steadying presence. I thought did a good job defensively, Andy. And you'll take 15.7 rebounds from him on the road, any day of the week.
Yeah, I would agree. I thought he was solid on the defensive end, a few questionable shots, but overall, I feel like the story on him is the same as it typically has been. If you can get him transition opportunities, get him to use his athleticism on the offensive glass, and just be active and really run the floor, I think that's where he can be successful on a team like this where it's easy to get things bogged down with 2 post guys and him being in there where he can't stretch the floor all that much. It's just those kinds of things and really slashing a little bit more are positives for him. He had the one really nice put back where he got fouled, missed the free throw, but that was another big play there in the second half to get a little bit of momentum, at least if I'm remembering correctly where that came. And so I thought it was a really solid performance from him. I think easy to focus on, some of the negative plays, and he definitely feels like I think he and Devontae are in some ways similarly polarizing in terms of what they do. He seems to be a guy that within a game may make some plays, but can kind of play his way back into being an important factor in the game. Versus Devontae, it feels like kind of once he's gone, he's gone. And I think Archie seems to have figured that out because the Northwestern game, he let Justin play through some things. And he was a big impact player down the stretch of that. And I felt like the same thing today. He had some rough patches in the first half, but really bounced back within the game, corrected those things, and had a really big impact on the game overall.
Yeah, Archie clearly trusts him the most among the upperclassmen. You're right. He will definitely let him play through some mistakes. Alex, I know you have to pop off to keep doing the post-game shows or post-game stuff over at InsideTheHall.com. You want to give us a final thought before you bounce?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think just when you look at the big picture of how big this win is, the more IU continued to drop road games, they were lessening their margin for error in terms of, home court. And I know, and I encourage everybody to, always read Andy's thoughts on bracketology and the NCAA tournament stuff, because he has a much better grasp on this stuff than I do. But it was getting to the point where you were wondering if Indiana was going to be able to win a road game all season. And I know that that's not a distinction in the selection process, whether or not how many road wins you have, but it was really lessening their chances of being able to do anything less than like an 8-2 home record and still make the tournament. So this at least gives them a little bit of breathing room in terms of, the fact that they now have a road win. I think if they're able to just mostly hold serve at home the rest of the season, they avoided what could have been viewed as a bad loss, and they showed that they are making at least some progress in terms of how they started early in the season. Particularly the losses at Wisconsin and Maryland were concerning, not from the fact that they just lost those games, but how bad they were down in both of them. I think they showed us a little bit a little bit more fight at Rutgers, and then they didn't hang their heads after that loss. They came out, and as much as everybody wants to criticize Nebraska and how they played this year, let's not forget that they have beaten Purdue and Iowa at home already in Big Ten play. So it wasn't like this was a gimme, and I'm sure they're going to have some other road wins at home because they really pack those fans in there. I've never been there, but I've heard a lot of good things about the atmosphere. So all in all, I think any road win's a good win. It wasn't, quite frankly, a game that I was expecting Indiana to win. I thought they could win, but they should be feeling good about themselves. And they obviously have a really tough 2 games coming up, and had they lost this game, they would have felt a ton of pressure to win both of these games next weekend. And I'm not saying that they don't need to go out and win both, because it would be obviously huge if they could, but now if maybe they do have a slip up or two at home, it's not going to sting as badly as it would have if they continue to be winless on the road. So that's kind of my big picture thought on all of it. And it's I think you look around the league right now, nobody's winning on the road. So
40-7, isn't that the record for home teams?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure Nebraska's lost at least 2 of those. Northwestern probably lost 2 or 3. I know Iowa won at Northwestern. I know
Northwestern has lost. Michigan State won there. Iowa won
and
at
Iowa.
Yeah,
I think those 2.
Who are the other 3? Do you know this of the 7?
I don't know. I'd have to go look.
Well, Wisconsin won at Ohio State. That was one of Wisconsin. I think might have both the other road wins. I forget who else they beat though.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Wisconsin.
Did they win at? They won at Penn. They won at Penn State.
And Illinois won at Wisconsin.
Yeah,
there you go. It's a long list.
Wow. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad that we're more than halfway through January and we can still name every Big Ten road win. I'm
not sure what that says more about the Big Ten or the 3 of us. It's tough to say.
Well, I will say after Illinois held on to beat Northwestern right before this game, I tweeted, "Okay, this Big Ten home dominance nonsense ends now." However, now as we come out of this game, I would like the Big Ten home dominance to continue because Indiana now goes home their next 2 games, at home against Michigan State, at home against Maryland. Then after that, they're on the road at Penn State, at Ohio State. 7 out of the next 8 games projected losses, according to KenPom. Now, that's not the end-all, be-all. Indiana can obviously win a lot of these games, and they're projected to lose both of these home games. But one thing is you kind of look at some of these projections. KenPom has clearly not adjusted for this year's Big Ten home dominance. So, I look at both of those.
He's still
games.
using stats, not just a decision tree that's like, are you the home team? If yes, put a win,
and then just
if not,
bump it up. Is this a Big Ten home team plus 15 points? But hey, Indiana went on the road, got that win tonight, but we would like to return it to home dominance against Michigan State and Maryland. Any other players that we haven't talked about yet?
Trayce Thompson.
Yeah, we should probably talk about Trayce Thompson real quick, just to get Ryan's attention. Like he'll actually listen.
Yeah, come on.
We're 58 minutes in. We think Ryan will actually get here, but Trayce did play 8 minutes. wasn't overly productive in his 8 minutes. Did have a nice block shot. I figured we talked about everybody else. We should at least talk about him.
No, he had a nice block, and then I think immediately after that, lost a guy on a inbounds and gave up a 3-pointer. So
he did.
Win some, you lose some. But yeah, I mean, he gave decent minutes, but I think it was this was not a game where you really could play a ton of big guys no matter what. Although given some of what sounds like some of the comments that Archie made in the pregame, I was actually surprised they didn't play smaller lineups. They played fairly conventional lineups for what IU typically does until Hunter
I think
came
he
in at
wanted
the end.
to, but the guards were so erratic. I just don't he was pulling out at certain times. He had to pull
Yeah, it would have had to have been
decisions.
Jerome getting more minutes at that point. It wouldn't have been anybody else that really had made a firm case that they should be getting more time in a smaller lineup. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, go read Alex's work at InsideTheHall.com. Thanks for coming on, Alex. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So as we look to next week, Banner Monday wise, I'm gonna try and probably can't do the full show, but I'm gonna try and do the interview with DeCourcy. But just stay tuned. It's gonna have to be kind of an impromptu thing on Mondays. But then you look at next week, Andy. Indiana off until Thursday. One of those nice weeks for us in the middle of the season where the post-game show can double as Assembly Call radio, so it gives us an extra night with our families, which is always nice when the schedule works out that way. Obviously a huge game for Indiana against Michigan State. We saw Michigan State go into Purdue and just get absolutely blitzed. I'm not saying to expect that, but this is obviously a Michigan State team that is very good, but also vulnerable on the road. And then Indiana, comes back on Sunday to play Maryland. So, as you look at those two games, like what are your expectations? Given how Indiana's played, how those teams are, what the home advantage has been like what? Because I feel like it's really tough to kind of know what to expect for those two games.
I think with this team, it's somewhat hard to know what to expect really under any circumstances. So, yeah. I would say that Maryland has definitely struggled away from home. That's been, pretty clear. All four of their losses have come away from home: at Penn State, at Seton Hall, at Iowa, at Wisconsin. Although the Wisconsin game, I really felt like they should have won. Ended up losing it at the end. They play at Northwestern early next week, and Michigan State, for as much as it feels great that IU gets a little bit of time off, Michigan State played on Friday night and doesn't play again until they play at IU, so they even get an extra day off from there. So, I think it's pretty difficult to say. I think of the two, just based on track record over the course of this season and how they've played away from home, I guess Maryland feels like the more winnable of the two for a variety of reasons. Mark Turgeon is coaching Maryland, so that's a big factor. But for whatever reason, IU had Michigan State's number last year against a better Michigan State team. So again, your guess is as good as mine as to what's going to happen. But
so they're going to be overplaying Justin Smith from 3, so we'll have a lot of openings.
That would be amazing. I don't know if Izzo and company will be that swayed by these small sample size, but I hope that they are. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Ball screen defense is going to be really important. That's been an area where IU has struggled at times this year, and against Cassius Winston, who's about as good in those situations as anybody. That to me is where a big portion of that game will be won or lost on the defensive end. So I think anytime IU is playing, arguably IU's best performances this year have come in home games against good teams. So if that is any indication, I think that's a positive. And you'd like to see this team be able to build a little bit of momentum. I think this win should give them some confidence. It was not without issue. It was not without errors. But hopefully it's one that they saw some shots go through the hoop. They get a little confidence, and then you go home for a good while and a chance to pick up a couple really good wins in what should be a pretty raucous environment. So I think you look forward to that, given how things have gone in the conference, and kind of go from there. Definitely will be test. I still think that with the way Ohio State's played of late, Michigan State and Maryland feel like they've maybe not separated themselves a lot, but they still feel like opinions on them as arguably the top two teams in the league haven't really changed a great deal. And if you look at the KenPom projections, it pretty much backs that up.
Indiana has won 3 out of 4, and that's important. Coming off the 2 straight losses to Arkansas and Maryland, especially how that Maryland game went, things felt a little perilous, especially given what we all experienced last year. So, look, 2 of those games are games you should have won against sub-100 teams in Northwestern and Nebraska. But then, beat Ohio State at home, obviously took the loss to Rutgers. But I think we may have even had the conversation, like, what do you think Indiana needs to do in these 4 games? And I think we all would have taken 3 out of 4. And Indiana was able to do that and get a road win. So, really nice stretch for Indiana. And it kind of feels like that's what this season's going to be a little bit, Andy, where it's like, let's just try to stay ahead of the curve, for the NCAA tournament. And winning these games, that keeps you there. I mean, Indiana, right now, I know it feels like, okay, the November wins don't count, and we've lost some of these other games, but Indiana's a bona fide, 8 seed? Like solidly.
Yeah, I would say I had them as an 8 on Tuesday. They split games over the course of the week. I think Coach said that they had them as the last 8 yesterday. when they put it out. So I think they're firmly in that mix. I mean, the way teams are taking losses at this point, and a lot of teams that are far better than IU have taken some pretty bad losses, and that's one thing that at this point I think, barring which, given history, probably shouldn't even say this out loud, but barring losing to somebody you shouldn't in the Big Ten tournament, they've really dodged all the potential for bad losses, unless somebody really goes in the tank that they've either already lost to or would lose to over the course of the season. And that matters to be able to do that. Now, doesn't mean you can go, winless over, you can go 2-11 over the rest of the season and feel good about it. And in that way and say, hey, well, we don't have any bad losses. You still got to beat people, but at least put you in a position where there's nothing that stands out to be held against you. And Alex brought this up a little bit. I mean, the road win thing, you don't want to end up with just one road win, but you certainly, this team goes 0-10 in road games in Big Ten play. That's something to be held against you. So they've kind of dodged some of those things from a resume standpoint, which is positive.
Yeah, just stay ahead of the curve. You just keep winning these games. You're going to lose some of them, but it's like these home games coming up. If you win 1 out of 2, you just kind of stay ahead of the curve, and it's going to be a real high quality win. And I think that's important for this Indiana team, because it's never going to be pretty. Even the wins are going to, as you said, the wins are going to have their warts. But overall, and I know there's a lot of consternation. There's been a lot of anxiety, and rightfully so. We've expressed some of it on the show. But, now here we are more than halfway through the season, and you look at the body of work, and it's solid, and it is tournament quality. And now you just have to keep it going. And, we saw Indiana collapse last year during the regular season, but, they seem to have a little bit more of a rudder if what we've seen here, over the last few weeks is to be trusted at all. But now it'll really be tested, because Indiana has one of the toughest schedules in the country going down the stretch. So just stay ahead of the curve for the tournament, and I think we'll all be happy about that and consider everything else kind of to be gravy.
Yeah, I think the other thing, just when you look, you talked about how the KenPom projections are projecting them to lose, would you say seven of the next 8? Four of the next 6, the projected point differences are 1 or 2 points. So there's going to be with the big, which is not, I guess probably shouldn't be overly surprising given how closely bunched a lot of the Big Ten teams are. If the things play out the way the stats would suggest that they will, there's going to be a whole lot of close games really from here on out. As you look across the end of the schedule, there aren't too many at all that are wide margins one way or the other. I think at Ohio State is a 7-point one, and I think that might be the only one that's greater than 5 points, quite honestly, as you look down. So
yeah, well, you can see that because in the rest of the games, there's only 4 of the game projections that go to IU, but the final projection is Indiana finishing 10-10, which means that somewhere in there, the algorithm, kind of looks at it and says there's going to be 2 additional ones of those games that Indiana is going to win, and that's because so many of them are close. So that is a good point, Andy. Okay, let's close this down. That's going to do it for us. Before we do that, remember that because you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show, you get 20% off your order at homefieldapparel.com with the promo code Assembly20. So if you want a great deal on the most comfortable and unique IU apparel that you will find anywhere, go to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code Assembly for 20% off your entire order. That is promo code, Assembly20. Assembly20. Let me make an update there real quick on the sheet. Assembly20 for 20% off your entire order. All right, Andy, it is time for last call. Final thoughts on Indiana's first Big Ten road win.
A win is a win, and I think it seems to be becoming more and more important to just focus in on the record with this team, and maybe not exactly how they got there, whether that's from a seasonal standpoint or a game-to-game or within-game basis. It's funny because I had just gone through the schedule at some point earlier, before the season, made win-loss projections on each one, and I believe that right now they're exactly where I thought they would be. I didn't pick every game correctly, but I think they're either right where I thought they would be or a game within where I thought they would be. And I feel like had I not watched the games and just fast forwarded to this point and you saw that, you'd feel pretty good about it. Now the context does still matter, and there are things that are maddening at times about watching this team play. But the reality is, like I said, they've gotten through they've won all the games that they're supposed to win. And now you've put yourself in a position where these games, all of which can really I shouldn't say only help you, but predominantly help you from a tournament standpoint. Like, you're in a position where these games matter. They really can do a lot of good for your tournament profile, and that's where you want to be. You've set yourself up with a chance. You haven't shot yourself in the foot by losing a game you're not supposed to lose, and it hasn't always been pretty, but at least they found a way to bounce back from a road loss earlier in the week. They came back, really played well, and should have won this game by more in a place where Nebraska has beaten handily a couple other good teams. And so you try to put it in that perspective and say, hey, everything's right in front of you. If you can go and perform even at a 500 level over the rest of these games, you're going to be in solid NCAA tournament position, which, going back to what we talked about on Assembly Call Radio of, what the expectations really were coming into the season, you're in a position to achieve that. So it definitely hasn't always been pretty, and it at times has been really frustrating, but you've kind of, at least if you put it in that perspective, you set yourself up where these games matter. And now it's up to them to continue to evolve and get better, figure out the rotation and all those things, and go win some of these games, take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them and that have been placed there by how well the conference has performed overall in the non-conference. So now it's IU's chance to reap the benefits of that. And hopefully they will with these couple big time home games coming up this week.
Yeah, good night for Indiana. Important night for Indiana. Given how Indiana has played and just how, just not in games they've been on the road, to take that early punch, get down 9, and then to build a 19-point lead at one point. That just to be able to do that on the road, I think, was important. And then to be able to, not just hang on. Like, it's, Nebraska never got closer than 6. Indiana kept them at arm's length, did what they needed to do down the stretch. It's important. This is a confidence-building win for a program on the road that I think really needed one. And obviously, we all look forward to the day when, these conversations are more about how many Big Ten wins we need to get to compete for a Big Ten title. And we're not just talking about, okay, what do we need to do, just to make the tournament, which is kind of where the conversations have revolved a little bit now. But, I think if we meet this team where it's at, with all of its strengths, with all of its weaknesses, and just try to expect a team to maximize its ability and to keep growing and to keep getting better and to improve, we're seeing that from this team. They're not making leaps and, light years of improvement. We're seeing some slow, steady, but clear incremental progress that I think gives reason to have some confidence here as we head into this really difficult part of the schedule. Obviously, we want the guards to play better, and I think a guy like Jerome Hunter developing could really help. But, I think what we've seen over these last 4 games, Indiana's ability to win 3 of them, get one on the road, really important. And I think it bodes well now for what Indiana can do as we move forward here with what's going to be a gauntlet in January and February. But I feel much better about this team's ability to handle it now than I did a couple of weeks ago, and that's obviously a very, very good thing. All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you ever want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat
mobbers,
make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall, and don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson, who provides a lot of the music that you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you for sure on Thursday night after IU Michigan State. Until then,
take it from me, Nick Zeisloft. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And as always, go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Here I come. This is Stunt Sony.
It's time to shut it down, folks.
I mean, at some point that drop of coach won't be funny, but today is not that.
We're not there yet.
Still funny. Oh yeah, I was looking at Twitter, and yep, 1 hour ago, rumors and rants. Also, apparently, I was right about changing things up on the road might work.
Get out of here.
I am so glad there's not Assembly Call Radio between now and the Michigan State game, so he will not be able to go on air and do his victory lap, and it'll be forgotten by then. Sorry, Ryan.
Fantastic.
That's rough.
Yes, it is rough. Yes, it is. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, it was good.
Man,
I needed a win. We had a heartbreaker. 3rd grade loss today. Lost by 1 in overtime.
Oh no.
They played. It was easily.
I blame the coaching.
Easily the best game we played over the course of the year. So it was disappointing. We had a shot that was like online. I thought it was going to go in to win, and then I just fell on the ground after that. But it was no, it was good. It was fun.
It was either going to be Bob Knight after Michigan or Mike Davis after Dane Fife's foul.
I would, I probably would have just run around the place, lifted the girl up, and like just ran around with her. But no, it was good. They played really well, but it was a heartbreaker for sure. So
by the way, thanks for Trenton for remembering that. I keep forgetting to mention this during the show. February 8th, IU Purdue game. We will be there. Obviously, we hope that you'll be there at the game, but we'll be at Switchyard Brewery after the game. We're going to hustle right over there, so I don't know how long it'll take us. It'll probably be a half hour to an hour after the game, but we're going to do a live post-game show, IU Purdue. So we'll be doing it with the Crimson Cast fellows. So come, we're going to try and have an audience mic. So that you can ask questions, but it's going to be a fun night. So hopefully, even if you can't come to the game, come to Switchyard, hang out, see the show. And if you can't be there, we're really going to try. I can't guarantee it, but we're going to do everything we can to get the audio from that and then be able to post it on the podcast feed. So anyway, hopefully we will see you guys there. All right, everybody, have a good night. Have a good weekend. Go Packers, I will say, for my wife on behalf of her rooting interests, which I have adopted since we got married because I'm smart. And we will talk to you guys next week. See y'all.
Thanks, everybody.